We're adamantly opposed to the use of violence, vandalism, physical or verbal assaults on our veterans, and the destruction or desecration of our memorials. By defending and honoring these sacred places, we defend and honor those whose blood gave us the rights that we have to speak freely today. We're opposed to those groups who would claim support for the troops and yet engage in behavior that is demeaning and abusive to those men and women who wear our country's uniform.
Our main goal is just to protect. And we've never been an organization that causes trouble. We're in this organization. We try to let the public know that we're here for issues. We take care of our veterans, we take care of their families, and now we're going to be taking care of our memorials.
Again, I'm Kristen Taylor. I'm with FreeRepublic.com, also helping out these organizations. Got to mention for information on what we're doing on March 17th, people can go to www.gatheringofeagles.org. Gatheringofeagles.org. I wanted to talk a little bit further and try to just inform people the nature of the groups that are coming to D.C. in opposition to the war, supposedly, on March 17th. Answer, especially, is a group that is not only anti-American, literally, but is pro-terrorist. Answer was formed 3 days after 9/11 on September 14th, 2001 in New York City, where other people saw tragedy, mass murder, and an act of war. The people that formed International Answer saw political opportunity. International Answer is the child of the International Action Center, which is a front group for the Communist Workers' World Party. In May of 2003, 1 month after the liberation of Iraq and the toppling of Saddam Hussein, Richard Becker, who's being a spokesman for Answer for their effort on March 17, had this to say in a statement titled Counter-Revolution and Resistance in Iraq, published May 15, 2003, quote, "The anti-war movement here and around the world must give its unconditional support to the Iraq anti-colonial resistance." Unconditional means the use of chemical weapons like we're seeing right now in Iraq with the chlorine gas bombs that they're using against the Iraqi civilians. Answer gives that unconditional support. They're not a peace group. All right? They're a group that has chosen sides against this country. John Catalanotto, spokesman for the International Action Center, gave a speech in Rome on October 2, 2005, titled Iraqi Resistance Supporters Within the U.S. He closed with this statement: "We and the Iraqi people have the same enemy, the imperialist government in Washington. Long live the struggle of the Iraqi people to drive out the occupation. Long live the Iraqi resistance." Now, Answer, of course, is not alone in supporting the so-called Iraqi resistance. Cindy Sheehan herself has called those killing Americans and free Iraqis freedom fighters on numerous occasions. The leading so-called anti-war groups, including United for Peace and Justice, which hosted the peace riot on January 27th, Code Pink, which is Medea Benjamin, you guys on the Hill see them running around in their pink clothing and disrupting hearings and everything. The World Can't Wait and Not in Our Name, which are front groups for the Revolutionary Communist Party. The principles embodied in the UN Charter and in international law. The popular national resistance to the occupation is legitimate and justified. It deserves the support of people everywhere who care for justice and freedom. So what all these peace groups are saying is that even though the freely elected Iraqi government has invited the multinational force to stay, even though the freely elected government of Iraq has been recognized by the United Nations, and the presence of the multinational force in Iraq is authorized by the United Nations, and even though most Iraqis view what happened in 2003 as a liberation from the occupation of Iraq by the terrorist Saddam Hussein, these peace groups are saying that strong armed resistance and certain acts of desperation is legitimate, justified, and deserves the support of people everywhere who care for justice and freedom. These, again, Code Pink, United for Peace and Justice, International Answer, Not on Our Name, World Can't Wait, they're not peace groups. They have chosen sides. They have chosen sides with the terrorists, against the Americans, and against the free people of Iraq. So that goes to explain what we've been doing for the past 5 years in Washington, D.C. We made a vow at Free Republic that we would not allow this generation of American servicemen and women to go through what these gentlemen did for their service in Vietnam. You know, one of the things I was talking with someone, a veteran this week, and we were talking about the aftermath of Vietnam and how after the aid for South Vietnam was cut off by the Congress in 1975, North Vietnam invaded, enslaved the people of South Korea, Cambodia fell to the communists, Laos fell to the communists, millions of people were slaughtered, millions of people fled, a lot of people drowned in the South China Sea, others were subjected to pirates. It was a really awful humanitarian crisis. And they told me that a lot of the Vietnam veterans feel guilt over that, in that they didn't speak up when it happened because the country had so shamed them over their service and beaten them down so much that they just internalized it. And they told me this time they do not want this generation of America's men and women serving in our armed forces to be subjected to that same guilt, to that same humiliation, to that same feeling of betrayal by your country. So, what we're doing, it's not about Republicans or Democrats. It's about standing up for our country. It's about standing up for our troops. And it's about making sure that what happened on 9/11 does not happen again. A lot of times I go out, I wear this 9/11 flag pin as a reminder. I was here in D.C., I saw the smoke coming out of the Pentagon on that day. Answer, of course, is going to be marching from right next to the Vietnam Wall to the side of the Pentagon that was attacked by Al-Qaeda. That makes perfect sense for Answer, because they're on the side of the terrorists and they want to rub it in. They want to rub it into the noses of the Vietnam veterans. They want to rub it into the noses of the people who were attacked on 9/11 and their surviving family members. So what we are going to be doing, in addition to the veterans who are coming to protect the wall, there is going to be permitted areas through the Park Service for peaceful, lawful counter demonstrations, where we will seek to educate fellow travelers of Answer who think they're coming to a peace and love march, that they're actually marching with people who support the terrorists. We will also have a permitted position at the other end of Memorial Bridge near Arlington Cemetery, to have a symbolic guard of Arlington Cemetery also. In the interest of making sure that things stay peaceful, we have opted not to have a presence at the Pentagon where the march will end, just because we anticipate that that is where there could be some problems from some of the people marching in the Answer March, and we really don't want to add to the concerns of the various law enforcement agencies that are going to be there to make sure that nothing happens to the Pentagon. We're not going there to get arrested. We're not going there to bash heads. The veterans are going there to act as a silent, respectful guard for the memorial for their brothers and sisters.
It has nothing to do with politics at all. We welcome anybody and everybody, regardless of where they are on the political spectrum, to join us and say this far and no farther. We respect your right to free speech, but we don't respect any tendency to desecrate or deface or dishonor our department.
Let me just add something. I think we're all saying the same thing. This is not left-wing, right-wing. This is neutral. As I said in my statement, every one of our members shed blood on the battlefield for their right to demonstrate, and we respect that. We respect the same level, we expect the same level of respect in return. History, though, has shown us at some of these demonstrations that regardless of what the leadership says about being a peaceful demonstration, about doing this and about doing that, in many cases they have been very successful in inciting the people that have joined the march that have more of a malicious intent when they join the march to do something malicious. And it is just our hope that by standing there and by holding this press conference, it's going to be sufficient deterrent to take any of those people that expect to join the march and to do something malicious to the morals and prevent that from happening. So we look at it as being more of a prevention, deterrent, to make sure that people respect the rights. You know, Larry had talked about, I think, what, your brother-in-law or your friend or your cousin. I don't like telling this story, but I'll tell you this story about where we are as Vietnam veterans. When I was returning from my second tour in Vietnam in the Chicago O'Hare Airport, sitting to get on a flight to Boston, several young people came up to me, and I was not spat upon, but I was called a baby killer. And many of those terms that were used back in the early 70s towards soldiers who had fought in Vietnam. And we would have expected that a lot of that would have ended. But a number of years later, when I was still in the Army Reserve and at a recruiting drive wearing a uniform, this nice gentleman came up to me about my age at that time. He said, "I see you have a Purple Heart." And I says, "Yes, I do." He said, "So you were wounded?" "Yes." He said, "You fought in Vietnam?" "Yes." "Too bad you weren't killed, and that's how you should have got your Purple Heart." Now that was about 10 years later. That feeling for Vietnam veterans is alive and well. It was only after the first Desert Storm that the change of the public happened to the Vietnam veterans. I never belonged to a veteran group for a long time. But our vow has always been, as many of the people say in Rolling Thunder and Christian's group and that, is that we will not allow this generation to go through what my generation went through. That's extremely important to us. And that's why we've decided to get involved at this point. Because if we allow any desecration of any of the memorials, we're basically giving in again. And the next step won't be towards the World War II, the Korean War veteran, or the Vietnam veteran, or anybody from Panama, or any of the action since then. It will now be displaced from all of them to these young men and women who are fighting now. And we cannot let that happen, and we won't let it happen. And if that's politics, then that's the only politics that is involved.
I do want to talk about some of the desecration of memorials that has happened recently. On January 27th, the Capitol was spray painted by anti-war protesters. Also on January 27th, the recruiting center at 14th and L Street Northwest was attacked by anti-war protesters who were driven off by Metropolitan Police. Also on January 27th, a disabled Iraq War veteran was spat on, called a murderer, called racist names. He was threatened by peace protesters. And the main thing that this Iraq War veteran was saying as he stood on his crutches because he lost part of his leg as a result of his service in Iraq, he was asking people, "Don't you think the Iraqi people deserve the freedom that we have?" "I do." That was the basis of his comments, and that's what provoked so much hatred and fury from these peace activists, just asking a simple question, "Don't you think the Iraqi people deserve freedom?" In March of 2005, I handed this out. You know, it's a cheap black and white copy of the news article off the web. But what it shows is desecration of the Medal of Honor monument in Indianapolis. Happened about 2 years ago, where the glass at the memorial was broken and things were spray painted all over the place. I got a call yesterday from somebody who asked me, the people that are coming, to protest the war, they're Americans. You don't think they'd do something to the wall, do you? And I said, look, it's been happening. It's been happening around the country. It happened at the Capitol. It happened with this in Indianapolis. It's happened in other places. So, there is a very real concern, and specifically with ANSWER and the International Action Center. And on January 20, 2001, the International Action Center had a permit at the Navy Memorial to protest the inauguration of George Bush. At the Navy Memorial, the protesters there at the International Action Center protest took down the flags on the mast at the Navy Memorial and hung up black anarchist banners in their place. They desecrated that memorial. On January 27th, when Code Pink had a protest at the Navy Memorial with Jane Fonda, which a lot of us found extremely insulting, Code Pink desecrated that memorial. They decorated the statue of the lone sailor there in Code Pink garb. These people, they're not respectful of our veterans. They aren't respectful of the things that Americans hold near and dear. These groups, they say they're for peace. ANSWER, and they're against war. ANSWER on its website is promoting the violent, murderous, communist revolutionary Che Guevara. People of a certain age understand who Che Guevara was. Let me just one thing. The other group, United for Peace and Justice, which hosted the January 27th rally, they're promoting the assassination and mass murder of Halliburton executives. So, they're not about peace and justice. Yes,
but we're not sure. We're still working on MNs. We're probably going to just gather and keep an eye on our memorials. Be there and have a reunion. Basically, we're going to end up having a veterans reunion, which will be good, and just keep our eye on everything. Well, I don't know if we'll probably go arm in arm. I don't think that's needed. I think we're just the fact that we're there protecting our monuments is going to be enough.
I know people that aren't able to come to Washington are asking us what can we do in our hometown, and we're encouraging them to hold a gathering at the war memorials in their hometowns on the 17th. Also, another group that I'm working with, Move America Forward. They've got a caravan that'll be starting, I think, March 8th in California, and making its way across the country with stops all along the way. They will have with them several Gold Star parents who lost children to the war in Iraq. A Blue Star mother, Deborah Johns, whose son is on his third tour in Iraq right now. The two Gold Star parents themselves are veterans. Deborah Argel Bastian, she's a Vietnam era veteran, and Joseph Williams, the other Gold Star parent, he is a Vietnam veteran. They'll also have a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom with them. Also on Friday night, we'll have our regular gathering outside the main gates of Walter Reed starting at 7 o'clock. We're there for about 2 to 3 hours. Usually it's a few dozen of us showing our support for the troops, and also to counter an anti-war group that started protesting the war outside the main gates of Walter Reed, where they were calling our troops murderers and idiots and other things that really boost the morale of wounded troops and their families. So that's what we'll be doing. Depending on how things develop, depending on how many people come, we may expand, but our main focus has been and will be protecting the wall and the other memorials around it, the women's statue, the brothers statue, Korean memorial, World War II memorial, making sure that things stay nice and peaceful and respected, undesecrated.